thought I'd do something a little different for this video, because I've actually got a whole heap of pure raw wool, and it looks a bit like this. I've got a huge tub of it, and I thought what I might do is go through with you and card it together, spin it together, and then see how much we've got of it, and then decide what project we're going to make from it. Because even though I've got a lot of it and there's still some more in the tub, I don't know how much, I'm losing it everywhere. I don't know how much of it will actually make, how much meterage it will make. I don't know. So therefore I don't know what to make out of it and what to plan for. So I thought, let's do it together. Let's make that decision together. So I'm going to go through the carding process with you. I've already picked it. So it is relatively clean. You can't get all the vegetation matter or VM out of your raw fleeces, but you can do it a lot better than when it comes in originally. And so I thought, let's do the whole thing together and see what we end up with. So let's get the process started and see where we end up. Let me introduce you to my U-Butte carding machine. This is what we are going to be using to card my beautiful raw wool. Now, I can't spin with that. It's impossible. So, well, it's not impossible, I can actually do it, but it's hard. So, to get it into some form to be able to spin it, I use this. I love my carding machine. All those people who can use hand carders, like these, I salute you. I don't know how you do it, you're brilliant. I use this. So, it's a very simple process. And let me show you how it actually works. You just need to get some of your wool, or alpaca, or whatever fibre you're using, and what this machine does is actually make it into a bat, and it's from the bat that we can actually spin from. our bat and let's put it through another time. And there is our bat, gone through the carder twice, and so let's go and spin it. Finished spinning the yarn, the roving, and managed to get 3 skeins. The third one is actually drying at the moment, and there's about 200 meters in each skein. So this theoretically means I could make 3 garments out of it. Definitely can make a beanie. I'm thinking of definitely making mittens, and if I have enough, maybe some slipper socks. It's not scarfable material, so I'm not going to make a cowl, infinity scarf, anything that goes around the neck. It's a bit of a rough wool, so if you didn't have sensitive skin you'd be okay, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people are allergic to wool. So no, I'm not going to make anything that goes around the neck. So I'm thinking my first project will be mittens. Then my second, so part 2 of this, will be a beanie. And if I have enough and I can do a part 3, that will be slipper socks. And I'm going to add a twist to it, so they're not going to be plain brown. So, before I continue on with this, I wanted to show you what else I was spinning at the same time. Yesterday I had a massive spinning day, and I have another project that I'm working on, which I've been wanting to get to you guys for ages, and I finally spun up the wool yesterday, and look at that. Sneak peek, look how gorgeous that is, and I love the colours together. So nice. I was so tempted to scrap everything and just do something with this. No, I will do the projects. I promised I would do the projects. So this one is going to be doing, you would have seen the infinity scarf tutorial. this is finally going to be for the beanie scarf tutorial to match that infinity scarf. So see the links below for that. And I will start off with this, doing the mittens. So let's ball this up and let's get going. Okay, to start off with, we are going to do the cuff. Okay, so 16 stitches plus 1 plus 1. For our ribbing, we are going to single crochet in each stitch. Skip the first stitch, go into the second stitch and single crochet. So hook in, grab the yarn, pull it through, grab the yarn, pull through the 2. Next stitch, in, grab, there we go. Okay, at the end of your row, chain 1, turn, and then in the V of your stitch, so we're not going under, we are going in the V. So have a look on the top, see the V there, we are going into the V, and then continue your single crochet. So in that V, single crochet. Okay, so every row from now onwards is going to be in that V, going into the V and doing your stitch. You will need to make 28 rows. Just remember, at the end of each row you're chaining 1, then turning. Do this for 28 rows, and I will meet you back here when you have finished that. Once you have crocheted your 28 rows, we now need to join the cuff together. So make sure your tail is down the bottom, your last stitch is up the top corner, right hand corner, and bring the 2 together. What we are going to do is stitch together the rows with a slip stitch. So you need to start by going into the very first stitch, grab your yarn, pull your yarn through those 2 stitches on your hook. Then find your second stitch, go in the middle of that second stitch on one side, go to the corresponding stitch on the other side, grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. And repeat this all the way down for each stitch to join your cuff together. Once you have joined your cuff together, turn your cuff inside out. Okay, and you can see that the seam has disappeared. It's right there. Now we are going to make 28 stitches around the cuff. So the easiest way is you have 28 rows, so put a stitch in at the top of every row. So 1, and in the ridge, and on the top, and in the ridge, and on the top. So as you're going around, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. This will be a half double crochet, and as I work around, I actually work in my tail as well, so you don't have to worry about sewing that in later. So go as close to the top as you can, but make sure you grab more than one loop, otherwise it's going to look a bit gappy. So remember, you're putting a stitch at the top of each row. When you finish that first row, count that to make sure you have 28 stitches. Once you can confirm you've got 28 stitches, then join your rows together by going into, make sure your yarn's at the front, go into the back of the stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and there we go, we've joined our row. Now the next row, we will be increasing on every third stitch. So chain 1, and then we are going to be half double crochet again, 1, 2, and then in the third stitch we want to put 2 half double crochets, 1, 2. Then we go for the next 2 stitches, 1 stitch, next stitch, another stitch, and then the next stitch 2 half double crochets, 1, 2, next stitch 1, next stitch 2, and the next stitch, which is our third stitch, we want to put 2 half double crochets, 1, 2. Before you finish this second row, make sure that you have 38 stitches, and then join your row together. Chain 1, and this time we're going to be decreasing on the increasing on the 4th stitch. So 1, 2, 3, and then this 4th stitch, put 2 stitches in the 4th stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4th stitch, put 2. When you finish row 3, it is really important that you have 48 stitches. Double check, triple check, because it is really important you have those 48 stitches, because the pattern to work out requires that you have a 12 stitch repeat, and 48 stitches is a multiple of 12. So do make sure, and once you have those 48 stitches, then make sure, then connect your row together, and at this point we are now going to start our pattern. And we introduce our second colour. So join your second colour, so make sure the colour you were working with before, you tighten off really tightly. Chain 1. And this is where we need to refer to the pattern. So the pattern does look a little bit daunting, And to start off with, it might seem so, but it's not really. So we've actually already done the first row. So if you can't remember what color is what, then you might want to write black is my brown, and then the white conveniently is my white. So do that for yourself if you can't remember. The other trick is all my odd rows are my black, the brown are odd, and all the even rows are my white. And that's another way you can remember. Sometimes your colors can be quite similar to the pattern and you can get yourself quite lost. Trust me, I've done it. So we have already done the first row. That was our last increase row. So I'm going to scratch that out and say, yes, I've done it. You can scratch it out, you can tick it, you can even mark with a marker that, yes, I've already done that row. And that way, hopefully, you won't get lost. The second row is our white row. And this second row, we are just going to do all the way along as white. I know this because I don't have any white leading underneath. So, not to confuse you much more, let's just do the second row as all white. And this time it is going to be single crochet in the back of the stitch. So let's just do that. So in every single stitch, we are going to be single crocheting in the back of the stitch. To start off with, it can be a little tricky once you get the pattern known. And don't be afraid to undo and redo again just so you have that pattern looking spot on. Once you've got the pattern going, it gets so easy. So you're doing a single crochet and you go into the back of the stitch. So where that V is, you're going into the back of the stitch. Grab your yarn, pull it through. And I am going to be working over my tail, so I don't have to sew it in later. And grab your yarn and pull through the two on the hook. Grab your yarn, go through the back of the stitch, pull it through and pull through the two. Into the back of the stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and grab your yarn and pull through the two on the hook. Now continue doing that all the way around till you come to the end. At the end of this row, which is the second row of your pattern, once again, double check that you have got 48 stitches. Join your rows together. Then this is when we're going to change our colour to the other colour. For me, that is brown. Bring it through. Tighten with the opposite colour. So for me, that is white. Chain one. And this is when your pattern work is really going to start. So I've done the second row. I'm going to scratch that out. And I am now starting on the third row. So for this third row, we are looking at everything that is in the black colour. So indicated by this, my first stitch is going to be a drop down stitch. I will demonstrate how to do this. Then the next 3 stitches are just a single crochet in the back of the stitch. The next stitch is a drop down stitch. Now the drop down stitch is a double crochet. The next 3 stitches are single crochet in the back of the stitch. This other stitch here is a drop down stitch, the double crochet. Next 3 are single crochets, drop down, double crochet. Next 3 single crochets, drop down, double crochet, so on and so forth. So you can see there's a bit of a pattern going down here. So what I do is I work out what the pattern is of my stitches so I know what I'm doing and what I'm counting. So for me it will be 1 drop down double crochet, 3 another drop down, 3, another drop down, 3, another drop down, 3, 3, 3. So on my every 4th stitch, I'm going to do a drop down double crochet. Because I'm on the black row, I'm only looking at the black drop downs, not this one, that's on our next row, this one, black drop down. Okay, so you're only doing the black row, and that's where it's indicating that you have to drop down here. So let's do this. So it says our first stitch is a drop down double crochet. A drop down double crochet is yarn over, and then you're going over this stitch and you are grabbing the front of the stitch underneath. This is why we're working in the back of the stitch when we're not doing a drop down double crochet. The single crochet is always in the back of the stitch, so it allows you that loop at the front to work into. So yarn over into that loop there, grab your yarn, pull it through, then grab your yarn, pull through the first 2, grab your yarn, pull through the next 2, and there's your drop down double crochet. Now it's saying that our next 3 stitches are single crochet in the back of the stitch. So 1, 2, 3. Now our next stitch is our drop down double crochet. So yarn over, go to the loop underneath that stitch there, pull your yarn through, yarn over through the 2, and yarn over through the 2. Now we know that the next 3 stitches are going to be single crochet in the back of the stitch. 1, 2, 3, and we know that the next one is going to be a drop down double crochet, and as we've already worked out, looking at the pattern, every 4th stitch is a drop down double crochet. Alright, so continue that, and you can see the pattern effect starting to happen, and that is, when we look at this, is this row here. Okay, so drop down double crochet, so let's grab that loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2. I'm going to leave you to finish that row. I will meet you back when you got back to this end here. So at the end of this row, it's saying that I should now have 1, 2, 3 half double crochets, and that would be correct. Okay, so just make sure that you eyeball that you've got it all correct, because you are doing pattern work and you don't want to misplace something, and then when you come to do your next row it's not going to fit, and so on and so forth. Okay, so mine all lines up. Let's join the row together. And then we're swapping over to our other color. For me that is white. Bring your yarn through, tighten off the brown and chain 1. So we have done row 3. I'm going to mark row 3 off. And now we are on row 4, and row 4 is telling you that we're doing a half double crochet in the back of the stitch, then a drop down double crochet, then 1, 2, 3 half double crochet in the back of the stitch, then a drop down double crochet, 1 double crochet in the back of the stitch, and then a drop down double crochet. Then we're doing 1, 2, 3, then a drop down, 1, drop down, 1, 2, 3, drop down, 1, drop down, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. So this is what this pattern is telling you now. So you're only looking at the white row, and wherever the white has gone down, that's when you're doing your drop down double crochet. So let's start this row. So it's saying we are doing a single crochet in the back of the stitch for the first stitch, and then we're doing a drop down double crochet. So remember, you're going into the loop underneath the stitch, so white on white, and then my next is saying 1, 2, 3 half double crochets in the back of the stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then it's saying drop down 1, single drop down 1. So let's do that. Drop down 1, and then a single in the back of the stitch, and then a drop down 1, and then I am doing 1, 2, 3, and then a drop down. One, 2, 3, and then a drop down, and then I believe it's a single and a drop down. So going back, single, drop down, then 1, 2, 3, drop down, single, drop down, and you can see where the pattern's going with this. So what we're doing now is a single in the back of the stitch, and then we're doing the drop down double crochet, and you repeat this all the way around. So you're just repeating that pattern until you get back to here. So repeat that, and I will meet you back here when you get to that point. So the end of this 4th row, we should be finishing on a drop down. Okay, and then finish off the row, join your row together, drop your current yarn, bring up your next yarn, your other yarn, which is brown for me, bring that through, tighten off your other yarn, which is white for me, and then chain 1. So that is the 4th row finished. I'll go through the 5th row with you. So the 5th row is saying that it is chain, single, single, drop down, and then single, 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 drop down, single, 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 drop down, single, 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 drop down. So we're doing 3 single and a drop down, 3 single and a drop down, 3 single and a drop down, 3 single and a drop down. So that's all we need to pay attention to, is that we're doing 3 single and a drop down, but the first row lot is only 2 single and a drop down, which means the last lot you're going to finish up with is 1 single and a drop down. That together will make you 3 singles and a drop down. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to start off this row with 2 single crochet in the back of the stitch and then a drop down double crochet. Now I also make sure I'm lining up with the underneath so that my pattern is still staying the same. So, and especially because I'm using a hand spun roving yarn, which is going in and out, which means some stitches are going to be fat like that one and other stitches are going to be little. So it's really important that I look to see that I'm following the pattern all the way along so I don't miss that stitch there, which means that yep, it's going above. So I'm looking at my pattern to say, yes, my first stitch has got to start above that drop down double crochet. So yep, I'm going to put my first stitch in here. And then my second stitch is going to go above that white drop down. And then my drop down double crochet goes into here. And once you get to know the pattern, you can see where you need to place your stitches, as well as looking at the pattern. You can look at your pattern on your glove and your mitten and see where the pattern is. So it gets easier and easier as you build up your pattern to see where you should be. To start off with, you might do a few errors, but as you're growing it, it gets so much easier because you can just have a look at it and go, nah, eyeballing. Okay, yep, I've gone wonky over here and I have to undo it and redo it again. Okay, so the next, so we've done this bit here. We've just done that stitch, and now we are going to do 1, 2, 3 drop down, 1, 2, 3 drop down, so on and so forth until the end of the row. So in the back of the stitch, single crochet, in the back of the stitch, single crochet, in the back of the stitch, single crochet, and now I'm going to drop down into here. Alright, I'm going to leave you to finish off this row and I'll meet you back over here. At the end of the 5th row, we should have a drop down double crochet and a single. So I've done my drop down and here is my single. Join the row together. And there we go, and you should start seeing the pattern coming through now. I think you've got the hang of this now, so I'm going to leave you to finish the rest of the pattern up to and including row 12, which shows that we're doing one complete lot of the pattern before, there we go, before we get to having to decrease for the thumb, so making the hole there for the thumb. So work the rest of your rows up to and including row 12, and I will meet you back here at the end of your row 12 of this pattern. Okay, so when we've finished our 12 rows, we are now going to put in where the thumb is going to go. So the thumb is removing one of these patterns. So I've already marked where they are and I'll show you how I did that. So this is the pattern here, which is this here. We're taking that 12 out of the equation and only going to be now continuing working on the 1, 2, 3 patterns left. What we need to do is mark where the beginning of this pattern is, which is this stitch here, and then go along 12 to the end of the pattern, which is this stitch here. So I've marked that out and I've counted that there are 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's my 12 stitches. I am now going to fold that in half. So you can count that there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 stitches. And now I'm just going to move one of these stitch markers across so I can close my gap there. Remove one of those stitch markers, and now I can continue the pattern as if just removing that one pattern out of the way. You just continue on to the 3 patterns, following exactly the same as what you have been doing all the time. So when I go to row 13, I am now on my brown, and I now need to do a drop down double crochet. So let's get my brown forward, slip my brown through, tighten with my white, then chain 1, and as my first stitch there, it says it's a drop down double crochet. So let's do that in that stitch there. There's my drop down double crochet, and then it says 1, 2, 3 single crochet in the back of the stitch. 1, 2, 3, and then it's a drop down double crochet. And then the next is 1, 2, 3, and then drop down, 1, 2, 3, drop down, so on and so forth. So we're just continuing the pattern as we've been doing it all the way along. Continue following the pattern until you get to row 24. So looking at the pattern here, we're on 13 now, and we are going to continue working up to row 24, and then at row 24 we are going to finish off the top of the mitten just in plain double crochet, and we'll come back to the thumb and work the thumb. So we'll work the top of the, so work your the extra 12 stitches, so up to row 24 here on the pattern. Then we're going to work the top here and work the thumb. So I will come back to you when you have come to your 24th row and have finished that row. At the end of your 24th row of the pattern, your gloves should be looking a bit like this, and we are finished with the white now, or whatever color you're using that's corresponding to the white that I'm using. Cut off your tail and leave your tail hanging, and we're going to pull through the brown, tighten your white, chain 1, and for the next row you can just work over your yarn so you don't have to sew it in later. So we're working with just the brown now for the finishing off of our mitten, and for the next row what we are doing is decreasing at every 4th stitch. So now we're going back to half double crochet, and we are just half double crocheting through the whole stitch, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then we are going to be decreasing on the 4th stitch, which is yarn, put your hook through the stitch, grab your yarn through, go to the next stitch, put your hook through the stitch, grab your yarn through, and then yarn over and through all 3 hook loops on your hook. Then we go 1, 2, 3, and then we're doing a decrease. Let me grab that yarn, I just missed it. There we go. 3, and then a decrease, so hook into the stitch, pull the yarn through, hook into the next stitch, pull the yarn through, and yarn over through the 3 on your hook. And then 1, 2, 3, and a decrease. When you finish that decrease round, join that row together, chain 1, and the next row will be completely all half double crochets and no decrease. So just do entire row as half double crochet. At the end of that row, join your row together with a slip stitch, chain 1, and this next row is going to be decreasing on every 3rd stitch. So 1, 2, and then a decrease. Remember, it's half double crochet still, so 1, 2, and then a decrease with hook in, grab your yarn through, hook into the next stitch, grab your yarn through, and yarn through the 3 loops on your hook. 2, and a decrease. At the end of this row, join your row together with a slip stitch, chain 1, and this next row is just going to be half double crochet the entire row. At the end of that row, join your row together with a slip stitch, and now chain 1, and now we are going to be decreasing every other row. And a decrease, 1, and a decrease, 1, and then a decrease, and at the end of that row, join your row together with a slip stitch, and we have finished our rows for the top. Cut off as long as a tail you require to sew in the top, and pull that through. Get your yarn needle, and we are going to close up the top. And all you need to do is just weave in at the top of your mitten, and do this on the outside, not the inside, because when you tie it off, if you leave a little knot or anything like that, Your fingers will feel it and it will annoy you to no end. Okay, pull your top closed and then sew up. Cut off the top. And there we go, we have the top of our mitten done. Now, moving on to the thumb. Get your yarn, start your yarn off, and start, you can take the stitch marker out and start off in the crook here. Therefore you can hide your work quite nicely in the crook there. And you can crochet over your tail, once again saving having to sew that in later. And then working in your half double crochet, you're making about 12 to 14 stitches as you go around. Now, it's not the end of the world if you do too many, and it's not the end of the world if you do too few. Just make enough that is comfortable around your thumb. Okay, back to the beginning. Now you don't have to step up, you can just keep going and work in the round, which is what I'm going to be doing. Now if you want to know exactly how many rows you've got, grab a stitch marker, put your stitch marker right at the beginning where you started, and therefore you'll be able to know how many rows you have done. And I'm going to work 10 rows for my thumb. I'm just going to check that I have got that enough room around my thumb and I'm happy with the size, and yes I am. So I'm going to just keep working my 10 rows up. If you need more rows, do more rows. So if you've got a long thumb or long nails and you want more rows, do more rows. I'll meet you back here at the end of my 10 rows. After you have finished your 10 rows of the thumb, leave a tail long enough to sew up your thumb and pull that through. Get your yarn needle, and same as with the top of the mitten, we are going to sew the top of the thumb on the outside so you don't get a knot or anything on the inside and annoy your thumb. So weave your hook, your needle through, and pull and sew the top. And there we go, we are finished. And so I can have a matching platypus sign. I have my little label, making sure I've got my mitten faced the other way, and it just goes in there like that. And then the back clips on, and I'll hammer it on later. And there we go, our matching gloves. Pretty chuffed. Quite like them. What do you think? Well, I hope you enjoy making this tutorial for these gloves. They were fun to make. I think they've turned out brilliantly using my hand spun wool. And here we go. If you have any questions about this tutorial, please feel free to message below. Thank you everybody for watching my tutorial. Hopefully I'll see you next time. If you do make these mittens or something similar, I'd love to see a photo, so leave a, you can either message me, go on my Instagram page, which is lucky_platypus1, and hopefully I'll see you next time in my next tutorial. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time in the she shed.